Welcome everybody to another Broadcast Team Alpha show. We have a remarkable guest with us today. And have you ever lost your keys? Have you ever wished that you could remember somebody's name? Have you ever wished that you could remember what you just read? Do you read pages in the book over and over again? We have somebody who is very special and who's going to help us with those dilemmas and even increasing our memory and our reading speed. Augie, will you tell us about our guest?
Absolutely. This is going to be very special for you out there, especially for you seekers out there and those of you who like to expand your mind a little bit. We sure have a good guest for you here today, and we are doing a little bit of time travel in order to bring him to you. You see, here it is right now at 1:30 in the afternoon, and our guest, I think it's right about 7:30 in the morning tomorrow. So that's because he is in Australia, and our guest is Shannon Panzo. And he is the director of Zoxpro training. And they are doing some phenomenal things. We're teaching photographic memory, how to organize the mind, and how to tap into that universal consciousness a lot better with more consciousness on our part in order to learn what is there and tap into it and use it more so. So I want to welcome to the show Shannon Panzo. And are you there, Shannon?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me today.
Welcome.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's morning there, and it is in the afternoon yesterday for you here. So this gets a little complicated, but I think still we can do it, right?
Well, that just means I'm ahead of y'all.
Yeah, there you are.
So we left your title out, right? It's Dr. Shannon Panzo.
Yes.
Yes. Can you just tell us a little bit about you? Some background? Because I'm a newbie.
Yeah, how did it all start out?
Okay. Well, I guess I could say it started out in a little town, but no, it really didn't. Basically, I was searching myself. I was searching for ways to control the subconscious and to program my own subconscious in doing various things. And I knew that from the information I'd gathered up until that point in my life, I knew that there was ways that I could control my subconscious and make things really happen. I just needed to find out how to do that. So I ended up finding Richard Welch. Dr. Richard Welch then onward became my mentor in all this. And Dr. Richard Welch taught me how to utilize the subconscious and taught me how to program and taught me how to be aware of my world around me in many, many different ways. So it also taught me how to mentally photograph material out of books, and which then gave me 100 times the ability to get information and retain information at very high rates of speed. So that's all great, and we'll probably be touching on that later. But the phenomenal speeds that I'm talking about, just to clue you in, we start people at 25,000 words per minute, but most people easily achieve in excess of 100,000 words per minute. Wow. just by mentally photographing. Now, along the way, I've been doing these techniques, which raises your awareness, raises your perception of the world around you. And I've been using the mental photography and such, which gives you incredible brain power because it's strengthening your brain as you're using it and such. And about 5 months into using this every day, because it is a mental discipline and you need to use it every day. So I was using it every day, and I found that it was really opening up a lot of different abilities for myself. One of those abilities was premonition. Now that may sound a little strange coming from a source that's supposed to be generating, well, how would you put it? Learning. Now learning gives you a lot of other abilities. So I was about 5 months into this, I got a premonition that I was in danger. Oh, well, I did not know where the danger was actually coming from. Now, at this point in my life, I was actually working at an explosives factory. And so, I could have been hit by a car, okay? But I was working at an explosives factory. I knew that there was something coming that I really did not know what it was, but since I'm working in an explosives factory, I decided to go ahead and gear up for that event, whatever that may be. So I got the proper equipment. I upgraded all my equipment, including my hearing protection, and went to flame-proof clothing, things like that within the organization. And I was working on a machine that basically was loading powder into very small parts. The powder it was loading was zirconium potassium perchlorate. It's 100 times more reactive to static electricity than hydrogen gas. So the stuff is extremely volatile, and it doesn't take much for it to go off. Just right for the parts, of course. So I'm doing my job with this autoloader, if you will, and I'm doing my job with this thing. And this is about 3 o'clock in the morning because I'm on the graveyard shift. I'm working the machine by myself. I'm the only one in the room. And so I'm doing everything by the book. I go and I open up the primary boundary in order to clean off the table, which is all per what you're supposed to do. And as I'm opening up the primary boundary, the whole machine explodes.
Wow.
And so I'm hitting the chest with a fireball, as well as everything else going on around me. But the premonitions that I received gave me rise to taking a lot of preparations, including spiritual preparations and such. I'd been doing quite a bit of praying and so that I would get past whatever this event may be. Now, at the moment the explosion happened, even though physically I was standing there taking the brunt of this explosion, I was actually, I guess you could say, removed from my body at that particular moment. And I was over in the corner of the room watching it all take place as well.
Wow.
And I still had the ability to control my body. And so I told my body to turn around and go out the door. And so my body turns around and goes out the door. Okay, fine. Now, once I'm outside the door, I'm in safe territory, so I pop back in. I'm now back in my body. Now, this is a strange event because this is what I refer to as translocation, where you actually are having an out-of-body experience, and at the same time, you're still in control of your body. But it is actually pretty strange. You're still connected. I haven't heard of too many people having that particular thing happen. Now, with regards to what took place actually in the loading room itself, the two steel doors on the back of the to give you the gravity, the two steel doors on the back of the room were blown off their hinges. The multi-million-dollar machine that I was standing in front of basically reduced its height by half. The blast was so intensive that the people that were on site, it rattled all the buildings, so they evacuated all the buildings. And gee, that was all neat. So I'm outside the room wondering what's going on because there's nobody around. My foreman finally comes back to see what is left of me. Basically, he was looking for the green body bag to scrape me up in because that's probably all that would be left. And so he walks in, and now the poor guy, he has a dark complexion, but he saw me and he turned white. All the blood drained from his face, because he didn't know what he was seeing. He did not know if he was seeing a ghost or a real person, and he was shocked to actually see that I was alive, because you're not supposed to be able to survive these things.
Wow.
Well, what was really interesting about it, I don't want to go into too much. I don't want to take up too much time with this, but basically, everybody confirmed that I shouldn't have survived this if it happened the way that I said that it happened. Okay, I should have been in pieces. This was confirmed by emergency personnel as well. So whenever I walked out, and it's just like an old comic strip. I walk out of this, and literally the smoke is rolling off my body. It's coming up my legs, up my body, and rolling. Okay, just like out of the comic strip. It was actually pretty funny whenever you think about it after the fact. Okay, well, when it happened, it wasn't that funny. But the point is I survived this event without a scratch.
Wow.
That's
That is very peculiar.
Excuse me?
That is very peculiar, that I should survive this without a scratch. At the moment,
concussion or any internal injuries either?
no.
Wow.
Wow.
Whenever this happened, at the moment that this happened, the only thing that I could suggest is that my guardian angel was standing in front of me, because what I felt is not what I should have felt. I felt that a warm breeze blew over me. That's what I felt. I didn't feel the blast. So when it comes to the things that I felt were not typical of this type of explosion. I should have been harmed by it. I wasn't. I walked away from it. I was so prepared for this event because of the premonitions and such, and the preparation I'd taken. I was so prepared for the event that once it happened, it was over. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. I was not affected by it. Well, the company, they wanted me to go see the psychiatrist and psychologist and go get analyzed and all the rest of this. There was no need, because the event was already over. Okay, so I refused to go to them. There was no need for that. And the company was always concerned that I was going to lose it. Well, that's not a good thing to be concerned with, especially if it's not going to happen. So really, I guess the main lesson is you can actually prepare yourself for such unordinary circumstances, that you can simply walk away and know that you have been just given I guess you could say a second chance, so to speak. And at the same time, the event is over. But this is a life-changing event for me. Now, things became a little bit uncomfortable continuing to work for the company. Many of the people there saw me as some miraculous person, or the second coming of Christ, and some people really said that. But basically, it became a little bit uncomfortable working there. At that particular moment, a position opened up with Richard Welch, and I moved my operations over to working with him instead, which was very comfortable for getting out of a situation where things had just become a little bit off where they should have been. So that started my career with Richard Welch. And that was back in 1986, and I'm still here today. And I'm still doing the good work.
That's 32 years.
Yeah. And through all this, we we collaborated together to formulate new and better ways of doing things during that same time. And yeah, things were really good as to what we'd accomplished. And basically the Zoxpro training is just an extension of what was developed back then and what we still teach today. And that go ahead.
Got a quick question for you. For those who are not familiar, who is Dr. Richard Welch and his role?
Dr. Richard Welch is the founder of brain management and mental photography. In 1975, to make another long story short, he bought a speed reading company. In 6 months, he found out everything that there was to know about speed reading that was in the market, and he became very disillusioned because, yes, speed reading served a purpose, but it really wasn't as good as, what was being claimed. And so he set out to maximize its effectiveness, and he started doing some experimenting that the actual industry had not done. And there was some very interesting things that were happening. The main question that he had is, what happens to the words that are not so vocalized? What are they actually doing? Are they lost in space, or are they actually doing something else? And this is actually the question that led to the discovery of mental photography. Mental photography is starting at 25,000 words per minute, where at that point, you can no longer visually see each word as you read it. So you actually transcend that brain function over to a different brain function, the new brain function being mental photography. And he found that by doing speeds in excess of 25,000 words per minute, he found that the retention suddenly jumped up to 100% for life. So instead of reading, which reading is proven to be very ineffective, and this is what everybody is meant to learn by. And basically what it comes down to is, whenever you read something, you only retain, after a 48-hour period of time, you only actually retain 5% of the material that you've read. It gives you the feeling that you've read it, but at the same time, it's completely ineffective at actually giving you content. So only 5% ever reaches your long-term memory. Now, the reason why this happens is because reading uses the short-term memory. Now, this is also what is associated with the hippocampus. It's a region of the brain. The hippocampus is part of the limbic system. It's been around forever. And basically, it's been around since we were in the age of dinosaur. Now, back then, we had to remember things for up to 48 hours because that's where we left the meat. And after 48 hours, the meat went off. It went bad. So we didn't have to remember anything past 48 hours because it was useless at that point. So this is a trait that's been carried on throughout time. So whenever we use the short-term memory, such as reading, we're still tapping into this ancient way of thinking. Well, the ancient way of thinking does not serve our purposes. Okay? This is the same reason why people forget. Not only forget what they read, but forget so many other things that happen in their life. Now, also, the actual function of the hippocampus is not to remember. The actual function of the hippocampus is to forget. It selectively forgets 95% of what you put into it. It's only what goes over to your long-term memory from the hippocampus is only 5%. So you better give it a lot of emphasis, that 5%, what's important, because we feel that that's actually the mechanism that actually allows that last 5% to go over into your long-term memory, where you've actually learned it. You've actually found it there. Okay. Now the long-term memory, once we get it in the long-term memory, well, then it does us some good. So how do teachers tell us to get it into the long-term memory? Well, we have to go and we have to read it and reread it and reread it. Then we have to go and we got to study it. Then we got to work at applying these different principles or these different memories. And we have to do this all within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, we forget it. So we have to really concentrate our efforts to get all this information really stacked in there and make it very, very important over a repetitive amount of time. All this takes time, a lot of time and effort. Whenever you look at mental photography, it doesn't take time and effort. You're starting at 25,000 words per minute, easily doing 50,000 words per minute. Most people will be doing at least 100,000 words per minute with 100% retention for life. Now, I have an analogy for you. Whenever you read something, it's like you're looking over the surface of the ocean. You see the surface. You know there's a lot of depth there, but you just don't get to it. It takes a lot of effort to go any deeper than just the surface. Whenever you deal with the subconscious, in other words, where your long-term memory is and where this information is going, you're getting the depth. You're getting all the depth of the ocean instead of the surface, because you're looking at two different brain functions. Reading is a top brain function. It's not even a normal brain function. Whereas whenever you do mental photography, it's based upon the eidetic memory that you were born with. It's based upon your photographic memory. Now, what this does for you, it enables you to put all this information into long-term memory from the start. So you feel that you have learned it. Whenever you feel that you've learned it, it's much easier to recall. But we have to connect those long-term memories to your conscious mind. And we have ways of doing that as well. Okay? So it's not that it's just going to go there and not do anything. It's going to go there, it's going to do things for you, and it is going to give you performance. It's not only going to give you performance just for information, but it's going to give you performance in a lot of other ways in your life that are really very valuable and incredible. Okay. So,
hey Shannon, I'm thinking about something here, and that is that thinking back on when I learned how to read, I started reading early, maybe around 3 years old, but it took me a long time to learn that. And what I experienced, and in fact, let me just take a little time to explain my experience, because I have a long history with this mental photography and the Zoxpro training. I went through the teacher's course with Richard Welch, and I traveled around the country teaching this course for, it's about a year. And I had a phenomenal experience with it. Because when we went through the teaching, we were practicing both with ourselves in the class, but we also practiced with people that came in just to learn. And it didn't take that long, not compared to the learning how to read the regular way. I saw some phenomenal results. When I was traveling into a town somewhere in the United States where I did this, I went to the library sometimes, and I got myself a stack of books, went to a table and put them there, and I took them down because I had the whole afternoon to do basically just, what I wanted to do there before the class at night, because we were doing this in classroom. Now you're doing it on the internet, which is much easier. And I went through this stack of books in about an hour. And one time I remember there was a guy sitting at a different table, and he saw me over there doing this, and evidently he couldn't stand it. He had to come over and ask what I was doing, and I said, well, I told him I was reading. He just stared at me for a little bit and turned around and walked away. He just couldn't comprehend that somebody could just 1 page a second. He couldn't understand that. And another thing that I noticed, that what we were doing, we were changing people's life. And I'm going to tell one quick story before I let you go back on it, because it is so good. There was one young kid that came to class. He came on a skateboard, and he was probably about 16, 17 maybe, something like that. And he was so dyslexic, he could not read. And when we did the reading test with him in the class, we gave them 5 minutes, and then, we watched and count how many words they read. And he was about 3 lines down the first paragraph, and he couldn't remember a thing that he had read. And he went through 5 days of training with us, and when he was done, he was reading with the rest of them at 75,000 words a minute. But I don't know what his score was on the test, but it was in the 80s or the 90s, which they all did. And he wasn't really sure what to do with it. But a few years later, he got a hold of me. And I think about 10 years later. And we talked for a while, and he asked, what am I going to do? He says, I know I can do these things, but what am I doing with it? So I told him that I had an idea for him. And we're going to talk in a few days. I got a hold of somebody I know over in Antwerp, in the Netherlands. And he's a diamond cutter. And I talked to the guy over there. He was old and he wanted to retire. And I asked him, would you like to have an apprentice? And he said, no, I don't do apprentices. And I finally talked him into it. This kid went over there and worked with this diamond cutter for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And he evidently became good at it, because years later he called me and he thanked me. Because he would not have been able to do that kind of accurate work without knowing what he did and learned through this course. Because when he developed this kind of visual, he could visualize angles and mathematics, and he got into the stone, and he could visualize the finished cut diamond inside of that stone. And then he started just cutting away what wasn't in his vision, until he got the stone perfect. And he was so happy that he had gone through this course. And this can happen to a lot of people. And that was one of my best success stories that I can think of. And you probably have things like this too, that you have recognized from people that has gone through the course. And that's why this has such a very special place in my heart, because I know what it can do, because it had done phenomenal things for me and other people.
I have a question too.
I'm off my soapbox. This is all yours now.
Well, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Can you summarize in a nutshell, or am I asking for really almost too much? Is there a way for you to kind of summarize what this is that people are learning? Is it a set of techniques, mental exercises? Maybe kind of go into, is there a kind of a nutshell about what it is?
Well, you learn some basic techniques. It's mainly doing those techniques daily and learning how to apply them in your daily life, so that it becomes more and more natural to you. Whenever people actually take the techniques and they put them into their daily life, typically within 6 months' time, they have to think back how they used to do things. And that's actually pretty important, because all of our techniques are based upon the natural abilities that people have. Well, your brain is a phenomenal thing that we take for granted. And it really can be your best friend, and it should be your best friend in everything that you do. So it's a matter of you using the techniques. It's a matter of you applying the techniques. The more you make it into your natural life as you unfold it every day, well then it's easier and easier to use. Okay? The learning curve is not that large. And likewise, when Augie said learning how to read, well, there's actually a percentage of people, usually around 30% of all people, have a very, very difficult to impossible time learning how to read. These are people that are non-readers. Just in dyslexia alone, 25% of our population, 25% of our population is dyslexic. So if you have 25% of the population being dyslexic, well, how many of those people are non-readers? Well, quite a few of them. There's 7 different types of dyslexia, and most of those go unrecognized because it's expensive testing. Schools don't really want to involve themselves in it, so what they do is they will typically try to set these people up with drugs for ADD. Now, when you understand what dyslexia is, you quickly find that the same drugs that are used for ADD are actually debilitating to a person that has dyslexia, because it actually increases the dyslexia to become even more of a problem. So to treat dyslexia as ADD is definitely the wrong thing to do because of the reaction that you get.
Can you give an example of maybe one of these techniques, a little bit of a sample about what people are going to be doing with this training?
Well, the main thing that people are going to be doing is they're going to be doing the mental photography. We have people start with books because books are pretty much, they have no agenda outside of the fact that they're a book. They're something you read. We can graduate to electronic media, but whenever you graduate to electronic media, you have agendas that are outside of just reading a book that you are dealing with, usually on a subconscious level. And again, we understand all the levels of this. So what we do is that's why we encourage people to start with books. They get good at books, and they can do this with the electronic media without having the so much of the intervention coming from the electronic media. Okay, so basically what you're doing with the mental photography is you're turning pages at a rate of 2 pages per second. That's where you start. Your brain will automatically accommodate faster and faster speed, so you just speed up your page turning. There are certain things that you do that there's what we call a cadence. The cadence keeps your conscious mind busy in a positive way so that the subconscious can do what it needs to do, and that is mentally photograph this information.
So you're getting the conscious mind out of the way and letting the subconscious do the photography.
Right. The reason why is because the conscious mind is your little enemy in all this. Your conscious mind, because you've associated with reading, is going to try to take possession of things that you're mentally photographing and say, well, you've read this, so therefore that's why you got the information. It's actually not true whenever you mentally photograph. Wow. The way that we can actually get people to realize this as a matter of fact is take a topic that you have absolutely no interest in. Okay, for you, maybe becoming a figure skater would be something that you would not particularly care for.
Right.
Okay.
Put my hand up on that one.
You have no real interest to become a figure skater. So what you do is you go and you gather all this information, all these books and materials on becoming a figure skater, and you mentally photograph all this information. And if there's some autobiographies of famous figure skaters, you'll be photographing that as well. Now you'll gain all this information, all this huge amount of very dedicated information about figure skating. Eventually, you're going to be involved in a conversation. The conversation will eventually turn to figure skating, and suddenly you become the local expert on figure skating. You're touting all this information in such an accurate way that you are obviously very well studied in figure skating. Then you come to realize I have never read anything on figure skating. I've only mentally photographed it.
You just brought up an interesting thing popped into my head. People that cram for tests in college sometimes ace the test because they waited to the last minute and they're literally scanning the material. And they've had to do it in a hurry. Is that
right?
Is that BS, or does that sound like it has a similar effect?
Cramming, most people actually do cram for tests because that's the only way to get the conscious mind to hold on to the information long enough for you to pass the test. Then, after the test, flush.
Away.
Yeah, it goes away. Okay. Yeah. Once you pass the test, you flush the information because you no longer need it. You pass the test. If I was to give you an exam today on all the different things that you've already passed test on, you would fail miserably.
Probably. Yep.
Okay. Simply based upon the fact that the information that you took in no longer is there. It simply got flushed away because you crammed that information into the conscious mind, into the hippocampus that forgets, and that's what it does, and so it's forgotten the information. And whenever you put information in through mental photography, it bypasses the hippocampus altogether. Since it bypasses the hippocampus, goes directly to long-term memory, you got it for life.
It almost sounds like you're getting into a meditative state while you're doing this, kind of in a natural way.
Yes, we do it in the state of alpha. It's your ideal learning state. That's no surprise. And it's a nice relaxed state because we want you to stay relaxed while you're doing this. It shouldn't be a stressful event at all. Whereas reading, on the other hand, reading is very stressful to a lot of people. You have to focus. You have to deal with words that you're not accustomed to. Whereas mental photography, it takes the entire page and literally copies it into your long-term memory. And it actually gives you 100 times the impact. Now, what that actually means, let's say you're doing an autobiography. You're doing an autobiography on a figure skater. You're not only going to pick up their information that they wrote into the book, in other words, what you would normally read, but because it's an autobiography, they're actually instilling upon them, they're actually presenting a piece of themselves. You can tell how they feel when they're writing the book. You can tell what's actually happening and their expertise in writing the book. All these things are coming across to you in a completely new and different way. And this is why it's so important, because you can, let's say a martial arts book. A martial arts book, a master of martial arts will take years to develop one single book because they have to do all the drawings exactly right. Because if you do a martial art and it's done wrong, you can actually injure yourself and cause great pain to yourself. And so the drawings have to be exacting. And because there is so much time and energy put into understanding what those drawings really mean, we have people that go and they will take martial art books that are created by masters. They will photograph those, and it'll actually come through on their motor skills where they don't actually have to go and learn the movements. That becomes automated.
So this is a huge difference between speed reading, because speed reading, you're sitting there watching words go by and you're trying to learn how to read them faster and faster. So this is a massively different way we're dealing.
The reason why it's so different, this is applied quantum physics. Everything in the world, everything in the universe exists upon energy and frequency. What we're doing is we're literally taking information, we're breaking it down to energy and frequency. That's what your mind digests. And it digests it and it lays it out very, very well.
Wow.
All you have to do is understand and use the technique in the proper way. And there is a proper way to do this, and there are improper ways to do this. We teach the only bona fide way that it's reliable. And that's what makes us unique. We've been doing it forever. And you know, basically, Richard invented this back in 1975. Anything after that is a poor copy.
So Shannon, when you photograph the page, does the mind get like a snapshot? Does it convert the words into a picture, or does it convert the words into a feeling? Or
think of a three-dimensional picture, like a hologram. That's what you're getting.
okay,
You're getting depth. You're not just getting the surface. You're getting the surface, plus you're getting all the depth involved. So, by the way, this is an easy way you can actually figure out which books are plagiarized and which books aren't, simply due to the feel that you get through mental photography. And even if you search your books on Amazon, you can use the long line of books that they show you on Amazon. Eventually, you can tune in your mind so well that you can actually determine which books are the plagiarized versions, because that's what is quite often there. Plagiarists are really good people at marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, because they have all the time to market. Why? Because they have no vested interest. Well, unfortunately, that means that the book feels empty, because the value of the book is actually based in the writer itself. So whenever you're looking at technique and things like this, then important topics should be given importance. They shouldn't be given things that simply make them non-existent. And that's what you're doing with plagiarism. With regards of the mental photography, it gives you the feeling, it gives you the understanding, and there's three levels of information. There's information, knowledge, wisdom. Usually this is how it goes. You learn information, okay. Some information is dangerous. You learn knowledge, okay, some knowledge is dangerous. But it's not until you learn wisdom as to know when to use what knowledge where. Okay, and this comes down to, are you a dabbler or are you an expert? And there's usually a huge learning curve between being the dabbler to the expert. There's this huge long learning curve. Well, whenever you mentally photograph, you not only get the information, you get the knowledge, and you get the wisdom. The wisdom gives you great avenues to how and when to use that knowledge. And this is why it's so important, because you get all three on the front. That's why the impact is so much greater.
amazing.
You've alluded to this photography aspect. I do photography, and I've got some experience with that. And one of the things that helps me is this concept of getting out of my own way. A lot of people, they get involved in the knobs and dials on the camera, and I've been criticized because I like some of the automation that's come out in cameras in recent years. I love the automation because it lets me stop fiddling with the knobs and dials and compose the picture. So the camera gets out of the way, and now I'm focused on the picture, and I can just relax and get the shot. And so I get from this technique, it's learning how to get our conscious mind of reading, get that out of the way, and let the brain do what it does better by this mental photography. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, if you want to become the world's best photographer, what you would do is you'd use mental photography to, I'm sure that there's photographers that you would love to emulate. In other words, not copy, but emulate. In other words, you look at them as your personal guides. Well, a lot of these people will have autobiographies as to what they went through as their own journey in their photography. And you can photograph those and have 100 times the impact of that, and you can gain all this knowledge and wisdom by doing it this way. And so if you want to become the world's best photographer in where you are at, without being so, quote, pedantic about it all, I think that's the part that you're stepping away from.
Yeah.
Well, and once you do it this way, then you might make some minor adjustments, but you gain the results that you want to achieve.
There was a scene in the movie The
Matrix.
Matrix.
Coming from expert level at that point.
There was a scene in the movie The Matrix in which makes a very good example of this, of Neo being downloaded, like you talked about earlier, the martial arts, literally being downloaded into his brain. I think people may be able to kind of relate that a little bit more.
Well, it's not like you get a...
well, I mean, not like you've got a thing hooked up to the back.
It's not like you get an electronic device shoved up your brain, no.
Right. But I did get a picture of the way you're talking about this, the whole thing about getting out of our own way, I think, is what you're teaching here.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing the brain to function.
The part that I really love about this is that, okay, let's say Michelangelo wrote his own biography, right? Let's just pretend. And if I had this training and I could read Michelangelo's autobiography, it's almost like, I feel like when I think about this, like almost like you can like channel some of his talent, if you will.
I don't know if you would really refer to it as channeling. Basically, if you were to compile a book of Michelangelo's works, which I'm sure that the book is actually available.
Yes.
If you were to take that and mentally photograph it, what you would get is you would get a feeling about Michelangelo through his works. I've done this with artists. And this one particular circumstance that I went into an area that one artist had displayed all his works, his gallery. And a lady come up to me, and she was just nicely talking to me, and I was explaining to her about the artist from his paintings. And I was explaining to her about the artist, and she says, well, you know, you have such an in-depth knowledge of him, you must have been around him for a very, very long time. Let me introduce myself. I'm his wife.
Wow.
And she says, how long have you known him?
Wow.
And I just had to explain to her that I knew him by his work.
That's amazing. That's great.
Wow.
And so here, his wife that knows every aspect of this person, I've basically written the book for her about her husband, which is he's a very complex artist.
Amazing.
So that in retrospect is just a phenomenal place to stand and know that you've made a difference, you know, that way.
Yeah.
I know there's something else also, Shannon.
We have people that do incredible things. There is limitless availability. Everybody has their own life to live. I can have a person that has a failing business, and they apply this to their failing business, and suddenly they're jettisoning that in a great and new fashion, new paths, what have you. There's people that their decision-making power has been absolutely corrupted. They use this for their decision-making. Again,
wow,
it makes everything beautiful again. People walk around today in a state, I refer to it as a state of amazement. It's a cloud. It's a shroud that they have over their head. They can't do anything. They can't think. This leads to depression. And so what do people do when they're in depression? Well, they go on drugs today, which even is worse because these same drugs that they go on for depression stop them from actually learning anything new. So they compound the problem instead of helping the problem because that's actually not what they're meant to be. That's not actually what the drugs are meant to be used for. And so they're reallocating all these different things in so many unusual ways, but it's not giving them what they want.
It's actually stunting their ability.
They want the freedom to act in the right way and in a building way. So it comes down to these people going and understanding that maybe some of the things they've been doing are not actually in their own best interest. Well, how will they find this out? Well, they have to find it out through a lot of soul searching or programming and things like this to figure a few things out along the way. And again, we teach the mechanisms to do that.
Dr. Panzo, you've gotten me inspired to learn more about this. My next question is, it's kind of like we're at the sale point. Where can people find out about your training, et cetera, your websites? Where can they get a hold of this? Because at this point, I'm ready. I want to find out more.
Well, if a person is only interested in an internet training, we do have that at Zoxpro.com. That's ZOXPRO.com. We have that training there. Also, we just opened up a brand new site. It's brainmanagement.com. So all you do is brainmanagement.com, and you can see, you can have a read about me and a little bit about my bio, a little bit about some of the strange accomplishments that I've had in my past. I keep the list rather short. I have to, because I've done a lot of things. We do have a video section on brainmanagement.com. It's videos and audios, both. Some of those are testimonials. Some of them are, on the other side of the coin. You have things on there from Richard Welch and such. So you definitely have a very good, a broad range of things that you can look at.
If someone wants the basic course, what's the typical length of time to go through the course to get the basic down?
I would say for people to give it no less than 90 days to really see what changes this will make in their life. The sky's the limit as to how you want to apply this. This isn't just school type learning. This is life learning.
Yes.
This is what you're going to do in life. This is how to make it all work. And it will.
That's amazing.
But you have to do what it takes.
I think this has been one of your best descriptions of your product, of this course, this technique, this way of learning that I've probably ever heard, Dr. Panzo. I think this has been one of your best descriptions this whole session. Mm-hmm. Really want to thank you for showing us this today.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
and also, there is a video that was put together by a BBC television anchorman over in England. And I think that would be a very good thing to show. So I think we should do that.
Just in, Photographic Memory Brain Hack, Executive Management Skills Training announced. Executives, entrepreneurs, and students can now get an edge over their peers by developing their photographic memory, brain health, and stamina in the powerful new Zoxpro training, a synergistic system of whole brain learning and holistic life improvement, including seminars, resources, and one-on-one coaching from industry leaders, Brain Management. More information can be found at this web address, brainmanagement.com.